There is a distinct difference between the enemies you fight on the battlefield and the enemies who share your last name. On the battlefield, the rules are clear. There is a perimeter, there is a uniform, and there is a weapon. You know exactly where the threat is coming from. But within the walls of your own home, the betrayal doesn't come with a warning siren. It comes with a fake smile, a forged signature, and a cold cup of tea left on the kitchen counter after a funeral. 5 years ago, I was trapped in a living hell. I was a young captain deployed to a remote operational base in the Kandahar province. It was a brutal, unforgiving winter. The ground was frozen solid, the air tasted like dust and cordite, and for 3 solid months, our communications lines were completely severed by insurgent jamming operations. We were cut off from the rest of humanity. We slept with our boots on, our rifles strapped to our chests, waiting for the sky to fall. But while I was surviving on rations and dodging mortar rounds in the desert, a far more sinister campaign was being executed against me back home in the historic suburbs of Richmond, Virginia. Pause for 6 seconds. My biological mother had passed away when I was a child. My father, General Marcus Hayes, a man whose entire chest was covered in combat medals from 3 different wars, had remarried later in life. His second wife was Beatrice, a polished high society widow with a taste for diamonds and country club politics. She brought her own daughter into our home, Chloe, a girl exactly my age, but built entirely out of vanity, entitlement, and a profound hatred for anything that required actual hard work. While I was overseas, my father's health collapsed. The heavy exposure to toxic burn pits during his early deployments had finally caught up to his lungs. He was hospitalized, slipping in and out of consciousness, hooked up to life support machines in a private wing of the Veterans Hospital. Because of the communications blackout in Kandahar, the Red Cross messages never reached me. I didn't know he was dying. I didn't know he was spending his final days staring at the ceiling, wondering why his only biological daughter wasn't there to hold his hand. But Beatrice and Chloe knew, and they didn't waste a single second. Pause for 5 seconds. My grandfather had established a massive, ironclad family trust fund. It contained $500,000 in cash, alongside the deeds to our historic family estate, a sprawling, colonial mansion that had belonged to the Hayes lineage for over a century. According to my grandfather's original will, the trust fund and the house were to be split equally between myself and my father. And upon my father's death, his entire share was supposed to transfer directly to me. But a dying man under heavy sedation cannot protect his pen. Working with a corrupt family attorney whom they had paid off with promises of a massive cut, Beatrice and Chloe fabricated a series of legal amendments. They brought a notary to my father's hospital bed while he was drifting on a cloud of heavy morphine. They placed a pen in his trembling, uncoordinated hand and forced his signature onto a completely revised estate plan. The new document stripped me of everything. It stated that due to my unstable military lifestyle and prolonged absences, I was deemed unfit to manage the family heritage. The entire $500,000 trust fund, the colonial mansion, and my father's extensive private collection of historical military artifacts were transferred unconditionally to Beatrice and Chloe. My father passed away on a rainy Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, they had already liquidated his bank accounts. Pause for 7 seconds. When the deployment finally ended and the transport plane touched down in Virginia, I didn't even stop at the base. I caught a cab straight to my father's house, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, my heart heavy with a grief that felt like a block of lead in my stomach. I wanted to sit in his study. I wanted to smell his pipe tobacco. I wanted to look at his old books and find some piece of him left behind. But when I walked up the stone steps and pushed open the massive oak doors, the house did not smell like my father. It smelled like expensive French perfume and fresh paint. The grand portrait of my mother that used to hang in the foyer had been ripped down, replaced by a massive, gold-framed mirror. My father's grandfather clock was gone. In the living room, Beatrice was sitting on a new velvet sofa, sipping white wine, while Chloe was browsing a luxury fashion website on a brand new MacBook. They didn't even stand up when they saw my uniform. They didn't offer a hug. They didn't express a single syllable of sorrow for the man they had buried just 2 weeks prior. "What happened to this house, Beatrice?" I asked, my voice cracking from exhaustion and shock. "Where are Father's things? Where is his study?" Chloe let out a sharp, mocking laugh, not even looking up from her screen. "Oh, the desk clerk is back from the desert. Look at you, Sarah. You smell like a wet sandbox. We threw all those dusty old books and military junk into the dumpster last Monday. This is a designer home now. It doesn't need to look like a barracks." Pause for 6 seconds. My blood turned to pure ice. "You threw his journals away? His medals? The things he carried in Desert Storm?" Beatrice placed her wineglass down with a slow, deliberate click. Her eyes were hard, calculating, and completely devoid of human warmth. "Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. You are no longer welcome in this house. Your father realized before he died that you abandoned this family to play soldier in the mud. He signed everything over to us. The house is ours. The money is ours. Your name has been legally removed from the trust." She stood up, walking over to the foyer and tossing a small plastic trash bag onto the floor at my boots. "That's all that's left of your little childhood memories," Beatrice sneered, her voice dripping with aristocratic venom. "A few old photographs we didn't feel like burning. You're just a government employee now, Sarah. You live on a cheap military salary. You don't belong in high society, and you certainly don't belong in this mansion. Take your bag and get out before I call the local sheriff to remove you for trespassing." Chloe leaned back, a smug, vicious smirk plastered across her face. "Go back to your tents, Sarah. Let the real women enjoy the inheritance. You have absolutely nothing." Pause for 8 seconds. I stood there in the center of the foyer, looking at the plastic trash bag at my feet, and then at the 2 women who had stolen a dead man's legacy while his daughter was fighting for her country. The grief in my chest didn't turn into tears. It turned into concrete. It solidified into a cold, dark, and permanent resolve. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't waste my breath threatening them with lawyers that their stolen money could easily buy off. I bent down, picked up the plastic bag of photographs, adjusted the strap of my heavy tactical duffel, and looked Beatrice dead in the eye. "Money can buy a lot of things, Beatrice," I said, my voice completely flat, completely calm, yet so cold it made Chloe's smile falter. "It can buy a corrupt lawyer. It can buy a velvet sofa. It can even buy a forged signature. But it cannot buy protection from the storm that is coming for you." I turned on my heel and walked down the stone steps into the pouring rain. I had $14 in my pocket and a bag of old photos, but I also had a uniform, a brain trained for asymmetrical warfare, and a lifetime of patience. They thought they had won because they locked me out of the house. They didn't realize that by cutting my ties to the civilian world, they had released a monster. The corporate world believes that if a crime is hidden behind enough layers of shell companies, offshore accounts, and legal loopholes, it becomes invisible. They believe that if you wash dirty money through enough legitimate businesses, the stains eventually come out. They are wrong. Every dollar leaves a digital footprint. Every forged signature leaves a microscopic variation in ink pressure. And every narcissist eventually gets sloppy because they believe their own lies. For 5 long years, I became a phantom to Beatrice and Chloe. I never called them. I never sent a holiday card. I didn't dispute the will in the local probate court, which allowed them to believe I had crawled back into my military hole, accepted my defeat, and accepted my status as the impoverished outcast of the family. While they were spending my father's money, I was climbing the ranks of the most feared financial intelligence unit in the world, the Defense Finance and Accounting Service, DFAS, Special Investigative Task Force, operating in direct coordination with the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. Pause for 5 seconds. We are the financial predators of the federal government. We do not look at standard tax returns. We investigate high-level white-collar crimes, international money laundering, and illegal foreign asset transfers that threaten the economic stability of national defense. I became a major. I spent 18 hours a day in front of encrypted monitors, tracing the flow of blood money across global borders. I learned how to read a person's soul through their wire transfers. And every single night, before I closed my eyes in my small Spartan apartment, I opened that plastic bag of photos and looked at my father's face. I reminded myself of the dumpster behind the mansion. I reminded myself of the concrete. Meanwhile, Beatrice and Chloe used the stolen $500,000 trust fund to catapult themselves into the international luxury import market. Chloe married a wealthy but incredibly corrupt European logistics broker named Julian, and together they launched Sterling & Thorne Import-Export Group. They bought luxury penthouses in Manhattan. They posted videos on social media from private jets in Milan and fashion galas in Paris. Chloe wore diamond necklaces that cost more than my annual salary, frequently hosting lifestyle vlogs where she gave advice to her millions of followers on how to live an elite, high society life. They used my father's stolen legacy as the foundation for a multi-million-dollar empire of vanity. Pause for 6 seconds. But greed is an addiction. Once you steal from a dead father, stealing from the government becomes second nature. In the winter of 2025, Sterling & Thorne Import-Export Group secured a highly lucrative contract as a third-party logistics supplier for the Department of Defense. Their job was to transport specialized, high-grade Kevlar weaves and raw titanium alloys from European manufacturers to U.S. military defense plants. It was a contract worth $85 million. To maximize their profits and fund Chloe's escalating shopping addiction, they began to cut corners. They set up a series of shadow shell companies in Panama and Latvia. They started secretly substituting the high-grade, certified military textiles with cheap, uncertified, industrial-grade counterfeits manufactured in unregulated sweatshops overseas. They doctored the shipping manifests, forged the customs declarations, and pocketed the massive difference in price. They thought they were brilliant. They thought the military logistics inspectors were just lazy bureaucrats who checked boxes and signed forms. They didn't know that under the new Anti-Terrorism Financial Compliance Act of 2026, any Tier 1 logistics contract flagged for structural discrepancies is automatically handed over to the DFAS, Special Investigative Task Force, for a comprehensive, deep-level forensic audit. Pause for 7 seconds. In May 2026, a shipment of Kevlar fabric arrived at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. The density test failed by less than 2%. It was a tiny variation, invisible to the naked eye. But to our automated tracking software, it was a massive red flag. The system triggered an immediate, top-secret federal freeze on the file. The corporate investigation packet was compiled, sealed with a red security ribbon, and placed directly onto the center of my desk at the Pentagon. I opened the folder. I looked at the corporate registration documents for Sterling and Thorne Import-Export Group. I saw the names listed on the Articles of Incorporation: Beatrice Hayes, Chief Financial Officer; Chloe Thorne, Chief Executive Officer. I leaned back in my leather chair, looking out the reinforced glass window at the gray Washington skyline. I reached into my desk drawer, pulled out my father's old silver fountain pen, the one piece of his inheritance I had managed to recover from a pawn shop years ago, and I clicked it into place. The enemy had marched directly into my kill zone. They had signed their names to federal defense documents, and they had done it with my father's stolen money. I picked up my secure phone and dialed the federal magistrate's office. "This is Major Sarah Hayes," I said, my voice completely devoid of warmth. "Prepare the high-stakes corporate audit summons. We are bringing them in. June 2026. Room 508, Defense Finance and Accounting Service Headquarters, the Pentagon." The room was designed to break the composure of white-collar criminals. It possessed no windows, no decorative artwork, and no comforting textures. The walls were constructed of soundproofed, matte gray acoustic panels. In the center sat a long, cold rectangular table made of brushed titanium and glass. Above it, harsh, clinical LED panels cast a shadowless, unforgiving light down upon anyone who sat beneath them. Beatrice and Chloe did not enter this room like suspects. They entered it like royalty. Chloe was draped in a tailored cream-colored cashmere trench coat, her fingers adorned with multi-carat canary diamonds, holding an exotic leather handbag like a shield of status. Her husband, Julian, walked close behind her, exuding the smug, untouchable confidence of an international broker who believed his offshore bank accounts were buried too deep for the American government to dig up. Beatrice walked at the rear, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing an expensive silk scarf and a look of deep, aristocratic annoyance. They were accompanied by a senior partner from one of Washington's most expensive corporate defense law firms. Pause for 5 seconds. "This is an absolute outrage," Beatrice complained loudly to her lawyer as she pulled out a leather chair, her voice echoing off the sterile walls. "We are a Tier 1 logistics provider. My late husband was a highly decorated general. To drag us into a windowless basement over a minor customs discrepancy is harassment. I have a charity luncheon at the French embassy in 2 hours, and I do not intend to be late." Julian adjusted his gold cufflinks, leaning back with a patronizing smirk. "Relax, Beatrice. It's just a standard bureaucratic box-checking exercise. The military logistics department probably had a glitch in their computer system. We'll sign their little compliance form, threaten them with a call to our congressional contacts, and be out of here in 15 minutes. The door behind the briefing screen clicked open. I walked into the room completely alone. I didn't carry a briefcase or a laptop. I wore my immaculate dark green U.S. Army Class A dress uniform. The gold major's oak leaves on my shoulders absorbed the harsh overhead light. Across my chest, 3 rows of combat ribbons, including the Purple Heart from my time in Kandahar, stood out in sharp, colorful relief against the dark fabric. I pulled out the steel chair at the absolute head of the table. I sat down slowly, placed my officer's cap neatly on the glass surface, and looked straight across the distance at the 3 people who had stolen my father's life. Pause for 6 seconds. The air in the room instantly froze. The complaints died in Beatrice's throat. Her eyes widened into circles of pure, unadulterated shock. Her mouth opened slightly, her pale skin turning a faint, sickly shade of yellow under the clinical lights. Next to her, Chloe stiffened so violently that her exotic handbag slipped from her fingers, hitting the linoleum floor with a heavy, dull thud. The smug, elite smirk on Julian's face dissolved into a look of profound, paralyzed confusion. "Sarah," Chloe whispered, her voice cracking like dry wood. No, this is a mistake. What are you doing in this building? Why are you wearing that uniform?" "You will refer to me as Major Hayes," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a surgical scalpel slicing through silk. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was completely, terrifyingly flat. "And you are not here for a customs discrepancy, Mrs. Thorne. Your charity luncheon is officially canceled." Their corporate lawyer cleared his throat quickly, trying to reassert control over the room. "Major Hayes, if that is indeed your name, my clients are the executive board of Sterling and Thorne Import-Export Group. There seems to be a profound conflict of interest here. If you have a personal domestic grievance with my clients regarding a family estate, using a federal facility to—" "Silence, counselor," I said, not even turning my head to look at him. I kept my eyes locked directly onto Beatrice's trembling gaze. "If you speak out of turn again in this secure suite, I will have the military police escort you from the building and bar you from federal practice for obstructing a national security audit. Sit down and keep your mouth shut." Pause for 5 seconds. The lawyer turned pale and slowly lowered himself back into his seat. I opened the thick, red-bordered leather folder lying on the table before me. I pulled out a series of high-resolution forensic laboratory reports and slid them across the titanium surface. They slid with a soft, whispering sound before coming to a stop directly in front of Chloe's shaking hands. "Let's look at the data," I stated, leaning forward, my voice dropping an octave into a cold, rhythmic drone. Sterling and Thorne Group signed an $85 million contract to supply certified, defense-grade Kevlar weaves and raw titanium alloys for the production of body armor and vehicle plates for troops stationed in Eastern Europe. You build the United States Treasury for premium, American-made materials. I swiped a finger across my secure tablet, activating the wall monitor behind them. "These are the chemical composition scans of the last 3 shipments your company delivered to the Norfolk Naval Shipyard," I continued, as images of compromised molecular structures flashed on the screen in bright crimson light. "You secretly bypassed the supply line. You used a shell company in Panama to purchase uncertified, industrial-grade industrial scrap fabric from an unregulated sweatshop overseas for $3 a yard. You repackaged it, forged the certification stamps, and sold it to the military for $200 a yard." "Sarah, please!" Chloe burst out, tears of panic finally breaking through her expensive mascara, running down her cheeks in dark streaks. "We didn't know. Julian handles the logistics. We just signed the corporate papers. We were lied to by our suppliers. It's a supply chain error, I swear." "You knew exactly what you were doing, Chloe," I said, pulling out a second stack of documents. "Because these are the encrypted bank logs from your offshore accounts in Latvia. Every time a substandard shipment was cleared, a wire transfer of $2 million was moved directly into your personal account. And according to the IP addresses, those transfers were authorized from a computer located inside my father's colonial mansion. You sat on the furniture my grandfather paid for, and you signed documents that put defective armor on the chests of American soldiers." Julian threw his hands up, his international arrogance completely shattering into desperate, sweaty terror. "Look, Major Hayes, let's talk like business people. We can fix this. We can refund the money. We will wire $40 million back to the federal government by tomorrow morning. We will cancel the contract. We'll exit the defense sector completely. Just let us handle this as a civil settlement. My family has deep political connections. We can make this beneficial for your career." "You truly believe your money can buy a back door out of the Pentagon, Julian?" I asked, a tiny predatory smile touching the corners of my lips. "You think because you bought off a local probate lawyer 5 years ago to steal an old general's estate, you can buy off the Department of Defense?" I reached into my dress uniform pocket and pulled out a heavy, multi-page legal document stamped with the official gold seal of the United States District Court. Pause for 6 seconds. "This is an emergency federal forfeiture and asset seizure warrant," I announced, my voice carrying the absolute, crushing weight of federal law. "Signed at 0600 hours this morning by a federal magistrate." Beatrice clutched her silk scarf, her chest heaving as she gasped for air. What does that mean? What are you seizing?" "Everything," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "Effective at 13:15 hours today, every corporate account tied to Sterling and Thorne Group has been frozen. Federal marshals are currently entering your luxury penthouses in Manhattan. Your private jet at the Dulles Airfield has been grounded and impounded by the Department of Homeland Security. Your luxury vehicles, your investments, and your offshore assets are now the property of the United States government." "No!" Beatrice shrieked, standing up from her chair, her face twisted in pure, aristocratic horror. "You can't touch the house. That estate belongs to me. Your father signed it over to me. You can't take my home. The colonial mansion in Richmond was purchased with funds originating from the Hayes Family Trust," I said, my voice rising with absolute authority. "A trust that you corrupted through documented document forgery and notary fraud. Because those stolen funds were used to collateralize the loans for your fraudulent defense company, the mansion has been officially classified as an asset derived from criminal enterprise." I picked up the heavy federal stamp, pressed it into the black ink pad, and slammed it down onto their corporate charter with a force that rattled the glass table. Pause for 5 seconds. "The house is no longer yours, Beatrice," I whispered, the words freezing the air in her lungs. "Federal agents are clearing your belongings out of the mansion right now. They are putting your designer clothes and your velvet sofas into cardboard boxes. You are being evicted from the heritage you tried to burn." Chloe dropped to her knees on the floor, sobbing hysterically, grabbing her husband's tailored trousers. "Julian, do something! Call your partners! Call the senators! They can't do this to us! We'll lose everything! We'll be homeless!" Julian didn't answer her. He just stared at the table, his eyes hollow, his face completely blank. He knew the game was over. When the federal government invokes national security fraud, there are no phone calls that can save you. There are no senators who will risk their own careers to protect a traitor who supplied defective armor to the infantry. I picked up the desk phone and dialed a 3-digit extension. "Secure Suite 508. Execute the warrants." The heavy steel doors burst open. 4 federal agents from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the Defense Criminal Investigative Service stepped into the clinical light, handcuffs glittering in their hands. Pause for 7 seconds. "Beatrice Hayes, Chloe Thorne, Julian Thorne," the lead agent announced, pulling his badge. "You are under arrest for federal major contract fraud, conspiracy against the United States, and international money laundering. Hands behind your backs." The room descended into a chaotic circus of weeping and metal clicking. Chloe screamed as the cold steel handcuffs locked around her wrists, her cream cashmere coat wrinkling against the gray floor. Beatrice wept openly, her aristocratic dignity completely dissolving into the pathetic, desperate tears of a caught thief as the agents forced her arms behind her back. They were dragged out of the room one by one, their expensive shoes scuffed against the linoleum, their cries of, "Sarah, please, we're family, have mercy," echoed down the long, empty Pentagon corridor until the heavy steel door slammed shut, sealing them in absolute, beautiful silence. The wheels of federal justice grind slow, but they grind exceedingly fine. 6 months later, the grand jury returned a total conviction on all counts. Julian was sentenced to 22 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary. Chloe was sentenced to 14 years. Beatrice, due to her age and a secondary plea deal, received 8 years in a federal correctional facility. Their multi-million-dollar empire of vanity was entirely liquidated to pay the $85 million in restitution to the Department of Defense. The historic Hayes Colonial Mansion in Richmond was put up for public federal auction to clear the tax liens they had left behind. I didn't use stolen money to buy it. I used the legitimate savings from my 15-year military career, combined with a standard veteran's loan. Pause for 6 seconds. Today, I am sitting in the master study of that colonial mansion. Outside the massive glass window, a beautiful summer sun is shining down over the ancient oak trees of Virginia. The walls have been repainted their original, classic green. The gold-framed mirrors have been taken down. In the foyer, the grand portrait of my biological mother hangs safely in its rightful place, the sunlight catching her gentle smile. I spent the last 3 months tracking down my father's original belongings. I found his old mahogany desk at an antique dealer in Maryland. I bought his operational journals back from a private collector. And his combat medals, the ones Chloe called dusty old military junk, have been cleaned, polished, and mounted in a beautiful velvet display case directly above the fireplace. The room smells like pipe tobacco and old paper again. It smells like my father. It smells like honor. The narcissists and thieves of this world believe that success is defined by what you can take from others. They believe that if they can lock a door or forge a signature, they own the future. They look at your discipline, your silence, and your simple lifestyle, and they call you weak. They call you a charity case. They don't understand that true power cannot be inherited through a lie. It cannot be bought with stolen diamonds. True power is the ability to endure the winter, to survive the blackout zone, and to wait for the perfect alignment of justice and time. Pause for 5 seconds. If you are listening to this story and your own family has betrayed you, if your step-parents, your siblings, or the people who were supposed to protect you have robbed you of your inheritance and kicked you out into the cold, do not lower yourself to their screaming matches. Do not waste your tears on their velvet sofas. You just pack your duffel bag. You step onto the long, hard path of discipline. You build your fortress of knowledge, and you become so unshakable in your truth that the world cannot ignore you, because one day their paper castles will catch fire. And when they come running to the high tables of this world looking for a savior, they will find you sitting at the head of the boardroom, holding the pen and delivering the absolute truth in perfect, beautiful silence. I am Major Sarah Hayes, and my father's house is finally whole.